And I'm very excited to be here with you and all of the volunteers on the Zoom call tonight, and those of you who were able to participate in the breakout, and those of you who are just joining us. We know it's been a long, strange year. We were just talking about how, in March, who knew where we would be, and we all thought it would be quick, at least I did. And that we wouldn't be so separated and so distant from each other for so long. But in Girl Scout world, we persevere, we adapt, we respond, we pivot, we make things work. And thank you to all of the volunteers who make it work. And we're here as staff of the 4 councils to support you to make your Girl Scout experience a wonderful experience so that you can make the girls have a wonderful experience. So we know this webinar, which is now Zoom instead of being in person, is going to be maybe some different topics than we would have imagined, 11 short months ago. But that's why we have such great speakers here to help you and to work through the challenges that you face. And I'm very honored to introduce our first speaker. Andrea and I worked together for many years. She was at Girl Scouts of the USA, and I've been in council, as we call it, for 30 plus years. But I've called on Andrea many times to help with some interesting questions, challenges that our volunteers were facing. And she is an amazing resource to all of us. So I'm delighted that Andrea was able to share her evening with us. And I'll just give you a little background. I know it was in the invitation, but Andrea Bastiani Archibald has a PhD, and she's a developmental psychologist, a thought leader. And let me move this over so my eyes don't keep wandering. And she is a board member. She works with purpose-driven brands to engage and further the well-being, passions, and potential of their teams, customers, and stakeholders while making sure they meet their business objectives and they drive social impact. She was with Girl Scouts of the USA for over 10 years. And for those of you who know me, know I love all the research out of the Girl Scout Research Institute, and she oversaw that. She really developed and implemented national strategic initiatives and partnerships to better serve the needs of today's girls, but not only today's girls, but today's families. And for those of you who have followed our blogs and our web postings, she provided the child development expertise that powers the popular Raising Awesome Girls site on Girl Scouts of the USA's website. She's a wonderful resource in terms of families, children, the social trends affecting our families today. And prior to her work at Girl Scouts of the USA, she was an assistant professor of psychology at Concordia College. She's been on Good Morning America, The Today Show. She's been featured in publications like Parents Magazine. So I'm just delighted to have with us today Dr. Andrea Bastiani Archibald. So turn it over to Andrea, Dr.
What an intro.
Dr. A on kids.
You can call me Andrea or Dr. A. Thank you so much for wanting to have me tonight. I love my continued connection to Girl Scouts. Once a Girl Scout, always a Girl Scout. I'll share a little bit more about myself that I think will set the stage for some of our conversations this evening. So I am a child psychologist, developmental psychologist. At GSUSA, I helped lead content and develop programs so that it was fun, friendly, relatable, understandable to the different ages of girls, and of course met our GSLE outcomes, all of the benefits we think girls will get from participating in Girl Scouts. And you all play such an incredibly critical role. I've spoken to so many Girl Scout volunteers and am eternally grateful to those of you who serve as such role models and support systems to girls around the country. Without you, we wouldn't exist. we absolutely wouldn't exist, and girls wouldn't have something to aspire to. So again, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening tonight. You're all probably doing about 5 jobs. I know some people are cooking dinner tonight. My family's not eating. I'm a mom too. No, they're not eating yet. But you're cooking, you're tuning in, you want to better yourself and better yourself in the role. And I truly appreciate the time and the commitment. This year more than ever, Girl Scouts and leading a troop of Girl Scouts has been a challenge for sure. Betty spoke of us rushing to go solely digital. Some of you probably had some digital and technological capabilities previously. Some of you didn't probably come to Girl Scouts for that. Some of us came to Girl Scouts because we spent enough time on our phone, right? And we wanted that interpersonal connection. So the appreciation extends also to your sticking with us in the most challenging of times and continuing to sustain our movement forward for girls everywhere. Betty mentioned that I used to led the development with my team and the content for our website, Raising Awesome Girls. And that was a resource to so many parents and caregivers, as well as troops, around the country. And for that, I'm incredibly proud. But I thought tonight we might tackle some of the tough stuff together. Those questions that you're not sure if you're the only one having this issue or who to ask, really. I like to, instead of doing a keynote, I can do those things, but I'd rather do something more fun, friendly, and perhaps meaningful here with you all tonight, because I have the background at Girl Scouts. And if ever any of you tuned into my Facebook Lives with our Raising Awesome Girls team, we're going to run it a little bit that way. Some topics that I thought of and that I've heard troop leaders talk about in the past that are real challenges are supporting girls' emotional well-being. Am I seeing a change in behavior in a girl? I've known her maybe for 5 years, and what's going on? I'm not sure if I should be concerned or not. Conflict within the troop, conflict within the troop adults. I've heard that one, ongoing for years. How to handle and be inclusive of girls with differences in their backgrounds and their experiences or things perhaps they're going through. Learning differences, for example. I used to support a lot of those challenges also from the GSUSA side. Troop dynamics, Zoom fatigue. We've all got that now. I was having a hard time unmuting myself. Well, you know how many calls I've been on today? Okay, so I'm right there with you. I'm also a busy working mom and a community volunteer. So I understand that juggle that you all are also probably, or many of you all are also probably experiencing. So what I'd love to do, I was privy to one breakout room, but wasn't very capable of switching between all of them. So I'd love to have you all drive some of the conversation. And I know Betty, Judy, and I have talked about some issues that have been raised prior. And I'm happy to also go that direction as well. But I would like to talk about whatever's most pressing. What's the pulse of what's going on for you right now, and what do you really need help from a psychologist with? No need to lay down on the couch. Do we have anything coming through the, we've got some people. Let's see, anything in the chat?
Not yet, Andrea, but I think one of the things that we did hear was about how do you, as you mentioned, girls who are struggling and you see changes in their behavior, what do you recommend? Our volunteers, most of them are not trained child psychologists. So what do you recommend as some of the resources that our volunteers could follow to make sure that girls' health is being taken care of, not just their physical health, but their emotional health as well?
I love that question. And we did talk about it a little bit in advance because we heard from you all. So I think you all, you know your girls best. Many of you know the girls for years and years. And what we know about when kids participate in extracurricular activities, sometimes the facilitators of those activities, like a troop leader, might see or catch something a little bit different that a parent or caregiver might not be seeing. Sometimes we show up in a slightly different way. And if you start seeing behavioral changes, or if a girl comes to you or speaks to one of her sister Girl Scouts and tells them that they're, having a hard time, what are you to do? I think depending on the age of the girl, you might, and in your comfort level, you might want to follow up with her directly if she's an older Girl Scout and say, I've noticed some things, and you follow up with an I statement. I'm concerned about you. Things, you don't look quite as happy in our troop meetings anymore. And see if that opens up some of the conversation. If the signs you're seeing are more serious and significant, and what we consider more serious and significant are, you've heard a threat of harming, a girl threatened to harm herself or to harm someone else, you want to definitely get the council involved for some professional resources, and have them involved also when you approach that child's parents or caregivers.
Mhm. Mhm. Andrea,
Thanks.
we have two questions in the chat. One is how to get older girls to stay involved in Girl Scouts.
Yeah, this has been one for a little while. I heard some people in the breakout room share about the amazing opportunities that their daughters are privy to because of Girl Scouts. I worked so hard with the marketing and brand teams at GSUSA. I know our councils work so hard at communicating those benefits, and still I don't think we've cracked the code, especially for older girls who are incredibly busy and have other demands on their plates, perhaps from school, perhaps at home, or a part-time job, etc. The Gold Award is an obvious one, but I always go back to let them lead. And what does that mean? It means being girl-led, really tapping them in a structured way to not only set the tone for the meeting, that can be done across ages, actually, creating group rules for, what's okay in our Girl Scout troop meetings and what's not, so that they have some ownership and they can keep everyone else appropriately and respectfully in check. But also let them plan the topics too. Let them lead and facilitate the experiences. This will be hard at first, and you'll have to come in as that important guide. But once you get it off and running, they should be able to reap some of those leadership benefits that we talk about, girls developing through Girl Scouts in an even more tangible way. And they will feel incredibly necessary to the group. They will know their role. And there isn't, by the way, one way to be a leader in Girl Scouts. But if everyone has some responsibilities that they're tied to and that they feel they can kind of put their stamp or their mark on, I think there'll be great reason to continue with Girl Scouts, even beyond the Gold Award and some of those other terrific benefits. Finally, if you can encourage your girls who might have a particular passion or spark, a hobby or a talent, ways to help them see how they can integrate that into their Girl Scout leadership experience and further grow in as a leader, but also in that talent area, I think that's a wonderful way. Other questions?
Yes. Well, we have another from a volunteer saying, and Zoom fatigue, exclamation point, please. Our girls have virtual online school and are so screen tired.
Me too. All right. Just calling it out. We all are, to the extent that you can safely gather, even in small and distant groups with masks always, but get the girls together. I would suggest outside, or if you can safely gather your troop in pods, if you will, I really encourage your doing so. I was speaking to another group actually this morning on the importance of being outside, not just to stave off this terrible virus that has so affected our day to day, but also because it energizes us and it fuels our spirit in a different way. Exercising outside, having what I would call moving meetings. I used to have some with my team at GSUSA well before a pandemic. Let's go for a walk together. Let's talk. Sometimes tackling difficult topics in a troop are even more comfortable for teen girls when you don't have to be face to face, when you're side by side and perhaps even further a little bit apart, you know, and walking forward. It's the same idea for parents and caregivers. Sometimes those toughest conversations come up when you're driving and they're in the back seat, right? Same is true for girls. So moving meetings are just, you know, one easy tip, getting them outside, doing Girl Scouts. I mean, absolutely doing the GSLE. That's what they came for. But to the extent that you can safely, that physical and in person, this is not in person, this is a little bit in person, but fully in person experience is incredibly important.
Great. One comment from one of our leaders on the call, it says, let older girls know it's not all or nothing. Girl Scouts can work with the other demands on their time.
Yes, Girl Scouts can flexibly work in, and that's also why I suggested just one way to tie it to something that they're already doing or already passionate about. It integrates more seamlessly into their life. It also helps them see how they can be leaders and make, you know, healthy decisions for themselves in that particular area.
We have another question, Andrea. It says, what are signs of depression in middle schoolers? It's difficult to differentiate between what's normal and what may be related to the pandemic, etc.
Great question. Okay. I've got a few different things to say here. So when we talk about symptoms of clinical levels of depression, we're talking about challenges.
Andrea, you muted yourself.
Yes. You must have hit the space bar.
Uh-oh. Where's Andrea?
I actually didn't touch the keyboard, so it was magical.
That's
I don't know, someone else might have had the capability, but you're shaking my hands. So when we talk about the actual symptoms of clinical depression for tweens and teens or middle schoolers, we're talking about changes that persist over the course of 2 weeks, changes in sleep patterns, either can't sleep at all, because sometimes depression can co-occur with some anxiety, or changes in eating patterns, depressed mood. You can almost see it sometimes on young children's faces. They look what I would call just low or flat from an affect perspective. They are no longer smiling or laughing at things that they used to. Similarly, this is kind of a fancy highfalutin word, anhedonia. That means I no longer reap the same pleasure from activities that I used to. I used to be a crazy skateboarding girl, and I loved going to Girl Scouts. Now I just can't really motivate. I can't get it together for that. So let's see, we did sleep, we did eating, we did anhedonia. Irritability is actually a unique symptom for children and adolescents, and probably some adults as well, but you don't always see total sadness in a tween or teen. You might see a tween or teen who's irritable, which is why it can be really hard to pick up, because what do we know about, you know, tweens and teens? Sometimes they're irritable, right? I don't know how many of you have lived with them. I have, and I've worked with them. But are you seeing this persist? Are you hearing concerning statements? If you're able, if you're the parent or caregiver, to have a quiet and private conversation with that tween or teen and talk to them. And again, it's out of concern. I can tell you're acting a little differently and it's concerning me, it's worrying me. It's hard at this age to get kids to open up. You've got to catch them really at the right time. I'll probably leave that one there. But can I finish? Actually, I see the second part of the question. What's related to the pandemic? And this is also, I think, an important thing to note. If you work with, have a child who was having some mental health challenges or emotional difficulties prior to the pandemic, they probably are having them in even more heightened way now. This has been so stressful and so challenging for all of us. This would be the time to reach out to them, not just once, but it's multiple conversations, and to check in as humans. It's not the time to say, did you get your homework done? Did you finish that thing for Girl Scouts? Did you practice for band? Or I think some kids are still having band. How are you doing? Fine. I'm good. Fine. How else are you doing? Give me different words. Maybe youngest kids or kids who might have some academic or verbal challenges, offer them some words. I think it's also, I'm going to end it here, incredibly important to model, believe it or not, when you are not feeling okay. Model it responsibly, but it's okay to say, I had a rough day. I felt really low. I'm having a hard time getting out of the funk. Then tell them what you're doing about it, because being mentally healthy does not mean not feeling bad or not feeling negative emotions. It's how we respond to them that matters. And as opposed to, getting angry and upset or isolating, what we want kids to do is to know that they can come to us, right? So you are then setting up the context that this is a safe space for this conversation, that we all feel all the feels some of the time, and that there are ways to work through them. I think it's great for parents and caregivers. I think volunteers would be great to model this too. Sharing, I had a really rough day. I just had to take some time to myself. So often as women, we do not do that. We are the ones who are always working 3 different things. We're volunteering, we're making dinner, we are going to work, we're checking in on the kids' homework. But actually modeling that I need to take a little time for myself is going to set your girl up for success.
Great. Andrea, I have another question. How do you manage children that are afraid to return to school or meetings? There's a fear on returning back to normal.
I know, and some young children never really knew what was normal. It's a very real question, and I don't have a definitive answer on this. I would say it should be transitional. And I'm hoping, the speaking engagement that I had this morning actually was to a bunch of educators, and some of this came up, but it's the idea that schools should have transitional plans in place so that it doesn't go from all at home to all of a sudden we're at school, and we were told that was dangerous, because especially for the youngest children, who are very black and white in their thinking, very literal, this is going to cause a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. They're not going to be able to make sense of this. We want reassurances that they're going to be safe. There will probably be new processes and practices in place in that school environment. And you'll want to talk about them as a school community or as a family about those, and offer reassurance that those practices are there to keep them safe. You want to let your girl know that if she's concerned that it isn't safe, and if it's, well, even if it's not so rational, she can always come to you and you can talk about it. And then you might want to practice going to school. So think about the transition from preschool to kindergarten. I often tell parents and caregivers to walk their children to school, to practice getting on the bus, to know where the bathroom is, to know what we do when the fire alarm goes off, right? These are all things that make us feel prepared and more confident in our ability to be safe there. I would also then And so you're not allaying their fears or saying they're crazy, because they're not crazy. They're very real. We have taught them, and by not letting them go to school, that we need to be safe when we're in larger groups, and we can't do that right now. But then you also want to talk about some of the exciting things and the benefits of going to school and how school can be more engaging and different.
Great, great. We do have a comment from one of the participants. She said, just popped up, 1 second. Say, it's nice to have girls lead. However, for some, it's a matter of Girl Scouts being a place to relax or let go. They do not want to lead. They want to be led or entertained.
Yeah, me too. Again, I can relate to so many of these from the girl perspective as well as from the volunteer. I think it's both. So then I would go back to your troop or group and say, what do we want this to be? If it's going to be a place of relaxation, how are we going to develop as leaders? There are probably some really cool conversations that they can direct and lead, and it's going to still be a fairly calm and relaxed environment. It doesn't always have to be a caper chart and take action projects. If you start some of those conversations in the group, actually, sometimes you can translate those to necessary take action projects that are needed in your community. But point it back at them. It should probably be a balance, being honest, but do we start off always as relaxed? Maybe this year particularly. What does one girl want to do? Does she want to teach everyone how to develop a mantra? Does she want to, I don't know, teach someone stretches or meditation, or plan her week is for the relaxation part? It's sitting under a tree, socially distanced with masks. You get my mantra here. Okay. But again, point it to them and say, what's the balance? You could show them a pie chart and say, so we have this many girls, going for their silver awards. We need some time allotted to that. These are our best friends. We also want some time to just relax together. Let's put this much time there. What about cookie sales here, right? But let them even guide that conversation and make those decisions. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just here to offer some tips.
Right. I think we have one more, Andrea. It says, children and youth may be unsure or even frightened by seeing repeated images of last week's riot at the Capitol. How can we help them feel safe?
Again, there are some times, and it's always been these great questions coming from Girl Scouts that have given me pause, but I knew this question would come up. The event gave us all pause. I mean, who's ever seen anything like this in their lifetime? And we're adults. So for a younger child or even an older child who's also seeing some of this replayed on social media, we need to offer them reassurance that this is upsetting to us too. That can be reassuring because, again, you're creating that space that you're allowed to be upset about it. This is scary. Validate those feelings. I would also, though, confirm that it's highly unusual. I generally say it's very unlikely that anything like this could happen again. I'm always recommending being truthful. So you don't want to say never, because we don't know that, but highly unusual. That we will do everything in our power to keep kids safe. I always love the Mr. Rogers quote, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers and call out the good things that happened that day. And it's really hard to find them right now. I find it so upsetting. And then finally, I would turn off the news. We get stressed by even positive life events. So incredibly negative and tragic life events really amp us up. We are already in a pandemic. It's important for us to be aware, but it is not important for us to chronically or continually, I should say, watch such images, because those become additional unique life events every time we watch them that cause stress. Turn off the news.
Yes. Good. I think, are there any other questions for Andrea?
Well, I was just going to jump in. It's Betty again
Yes.
and say, so obviously in Girl Scouts, we teach girls to be advocates, to use their voice, to learn about things, and find out what their passion is. So in light of last week and the pandemic, how do we help even our, the world's littlest leaders, our 5 and 6-year-olds, all the way up to our 11th and 12th graders? How do we help them understand the differences that this country is built on people having the right to speak, hopefully in a respectful manner? But how do we talk about differences? Because where we live, people may vote one way or the other, or believe one thing or a different thing. How do we help our girls understand that it's okay that if people feel differently, but how do we teach them that ability to respect each other's opinions?
I think one of the best ways is to engage them in some of these challenging conversations when they come up. Sometimes we fear we won't be able to moderate those conversations, and sometimes we won't successfully, but if you can give them the space to do so in Girl Scouts if they wish, it's not about one side is wholly right, one side is wholly wrong. It is about ideological differences and empathy, standing in another person's point of shoes and understanding their point of view from those shoes, I should say. What we saw last week was not respectful, and it was violent. People were hurt and lost lives. That's something that's not okay. But if you model and engage girls from the youngest ages in respectful and healthy conversations around totally different opinions, you are going to be setting them up to not only have them in the future, but also to see the problems with what they saw. There are so many different routes to advocate for change, to raise your voice. We share so many of them with Girl Scouts, but actually having those conversations with girls I trust in my trooper group, practicing offering a controversial point of view, not a dangerous one, but one that might not be popular or accepted in the group, incredibly beneficial. I'm seeing some more pop up.
Yeah, another comment, Andrea. The difficult part, as I see it, is the issue is not what we say and do, it's the rest of the world. What do we do not have any control of the effects of the news, family, friends, Facebook, etc.
You don't. None of us do. As I shared, at least early on, I too am a parent. I am a working mother. I am a volunteer in my community. My whole life has been devoted to serving as a support. And here around these issues, it might be a little of a buffer for young people. Help a buffer, I'm going to mix metaphors here. Are you a buffer or are you a lens? Help them see that through your eyes, not necessarily by offering your opinion, but by offering both your reassurances, how it made you feel, how it made others feel. Help them in an age appropriate way, think critically about the situation. No, and individuals are going to have different effects based on watching and hearing about incredibly upsetting things. But you can do things like, wow, I was incredibly upset. I've learned a lot more about this. I think today I need to take a social media break. I think I need to take a break from the news. I feel it affecting my mood, my productivity, my, fill in the blank. But model some of that healthy response to seeing such upsetting things. I think the most upsetting thing I was ever asked to respond to that is on this scale, but I don't know how you can compare. I was going to say almost even more horrific, but was Sandy Hook. and trying to explain, because kids heard all about that on the news too. And then we're also similarly afraid to go to school, but not about a virus, about gun violence. Many other kids, many of our Girl Scouts, unfortunately, have experienced gun violence in their own schools. So these are really challenging times. Open up your mouths, your time in your calendar and space to talk, to not just have one difficult conversation, but to have them and check in repeatedly, because these are things that are still percolating up here for young kids. And when we shut off the news quickly or stop talking about something upsetting, when they come into the room, they take emotional cues from us. They know something upsetting happened. There was something, you know, perhaps very frightening, something they should be fearful of, and they fill in the blanks. They deserve us as the leaders and those who love them to help guide them through these challenging situations and let them know that it's normal. It's normal sometimes to be scared.
Absolutely.
Yes, I said that. So I'm sorry. Are we out of time? Can we keep going or? Okay.
I don't see any more questions.
There's one more comment. So we had that in
Oh.
our Raising Awesome Girls piece. Action brings calm. When you, all right, so it's not just seeing the helpers. Thank you for bringing that up, Kay. But when you are part of the solution, when it gives you a sense of purpose to become one of those helpers, you reap as many benefits as those you are helping, maybe more.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. That was wonderful. We had some great questions, great answers. Really, really appreciate it. So we'll take our,
Yeah, I like that too.
I like the phrase, action is the antidote to anxiety.
Great.
To what Kay is saying. And
I learned so much from the chats. I love hearing, by the way, all of your tips. I saw some coming in. These phrases, I think they're great. If I can add one, can I get one more minute? Sorry.
Sure.
Stage. So I mentioned I was doing this other engagement this morning, and I thought this was so incredibly powerful about the, it was Dr. Tim Elmore of another nonprofit I was speaking with, and he talked about how kids, as I just said, take their emotional cues from people around them. And he likened it to, consider when we used to travel on planes, turbulence, because it's turbulence in their lives. And if you're experiencing turbulence on a plane, what's your first reaction? You grip the seat, right? White knuckles, you grip the seat. When the turbulence is sustained, as it has been this year, it's a pandemic, we have riots, we have racial and civil unrest, all of it. You do what? You look to the steward, the flight attendant, right? And whether he or she is calm, is concerned. And if they are doing okay, if they're managing, if they're directing, if they're perfectly calm, you feel better, right? So may we all be that in young people's lives in these challenging times.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Thank you for being that, everyone.
Okay, so we'll take our break. We're going to take 3 minutes. How's that? It's 7:18. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Enjoy that next talk on authenticity. I know it'll be tremendous.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea.
Headed to make dinner.
Thank you, Andrea.
So Kay, you're going to introduce Varsha?
Yep.
Hi, Varsha.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good, thank you.
We'll
Excellent.
give people another minute or so to come back.
Yep.
And then we'll get started.
Okay.
Oh, I was talking on a mute. I was asking a question. How do we make this interactive? Do people take themselves off the mute and then talk, or is through chat? What's your recommendation?
Whatever works best for you, Varsha. We can just have people jump in if they have a comment, or if you would prefer them to say something in chat, then we can just wave you down and say, you know, Varsha, we've had something come in on chat. So whatever works best for you is fine.
Okay.
You can let us know.
Yeah, in that case, I think people should just unmute themselves and talk, and hopefully there are not too many people talking at the same time.
Yes.
But I think that works well with me.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we will go ahead and get started then. Thanks everybody again for attending tonight. My name is Kay Stevenson. I'm a leadership development specialist with Girl Scouts Heart of New Jersey. Glad you could all join us tonight. And I'm happy to introduce our next speaker. She is Varsha Waishampayan. She is the CEO and founder of a group called Wings for Growth. This is an organization that promotes and develops leadership in women. So Varsha, once I'm done with the introduction, I'll put that the link into the chat so people can look up Wings. Varsha has 3 decades of management experience on Wall Street. During her career, she has built up large global teams from the ground up. She's led complex problem-solving opportunities and developed meaningful relationships in Fortune 500 companies, as well as in large nonprofit organizations. Varsha knows that knowledge, authenticity, insight, they're all what matter in almost every business. This is what matters in almost every business. She's learned and practiced that all her life. She has a strong operational background, and this helps her stay focused on execution and delivery. Varsha's topic tonight is being true to yourself. This is excellent advice for any Girl Scout of any age, and we look forward to what she has to say. So Varsha, over to you.
All right, thank you, Kay. And I'm so glad that some of you actually came back from the break. So appreciate you being here. I wanted to really make this very interactive so that it's not a very long, tiring talk. So my advice is, or my suggestion is, I welcome you unmute yourself when you want to talk. Raise your hand through the chat, whatever. This is more discussion than a presentation, but I do have slides. So I don't know, Kay, if I have ability to present, then I'm happy to do so.
You should be able to. If you're a co-host, you should be able to go down to the bottom where it's, there we go. There we go.
Are we able to see my screen?
Yes.
So let me just do that. And then also okay, is that everybody can see my slides? Very cool. So I wanted to start by asking everyone, and please, again, like I said, raise your hand or unmute yourself. Can anyone tell me what does it mean by being true to yourself? Everybody has a different definition. Let's start with, talk about this. What does it mean? Anybody? Anyone? No?
Hi. This is Nancy from Patterson. I think being true to yourself is knowing your faults, but also knowing and not being afraid to show your strengths and
Yep.
what you're good at.
Exactly. Anybody else? Okay.
being willing to say no.
Exactly, right? So in this discussion, what I really wanted to kind of talk, and I'm learning from you as well, that what we want to talk about, what does it mean? Why do we need to be true to yourself, right? We all have heard this. Let's examine truthfully that why do we need to be true to ourselves? And what happens when you're not? Let's talk about that a little bit. And what are the risks? So if anybody thought that it's all good, there are some things that we need to learn, because knowing yourself and behaving very authentically also means we need to be able to navigate, right? So we're going to discuss some of those important topics. So let me go to first introspection and reflection. So my first question to all of you are, and again, if anybody wants to volunteer, Saturday morning test. What will you do when you have nothing to do? You can write all that applies. So think about it. If you have nothing to do, when that ever happens, never, right? But let's imagine for a couple of minutes. If you have nothing to do, what will we do? Right? Everybody has a different things there. Some people don't want to do anything. Some people want to work out. Right? So let me give you some examples. Do nothing. Sleep more. Play music. Play sport. Right? All of that. Read a book. Go for a fun ride, or go for a run. Sit on the beach, and so on. Why do I ask that? Then why is it important? What does it tell you? It tells you that sometimes we don't hit the pause and do things that we want to do, right? I think the speaker before me, she was talking about we're multitasking, we're doing so many things. We're working mothers, and some of us are, and we're constantly doing household, full-time job, taking care of children, and very rarely we have time for ourselves. And it really is important to see who we are. What do we love most? When have we done that last? Who are the most important people in our life? When have we talked to them? It has been a long time I haven't talked to my best friend, right? Those are the things that really makes us realize who we are. That's why these kind of exercises are very important. And also, have I done anything lately that's worth remembering? And sometimes we think like, oh my God, it's been the same routine every single day. I go to work, I work long hours, I come back, I cook, and then on and on and on, right? This is why it's important to hit that pause and think about things that matter to us, which is part of being true to yourself. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. For me, it was music. I love music. And why that was important, that I always make some time to listen, to play piano. I'm not a great singer, but I sing. So as I sing when the rooms are all closed, doors are closed, so nobody can hear. But that's something for me. And what does that mean? That I like the creativity in the music, right? I like that I listen, I process, I love that creativity. That's what is more important to me. And that's why it was important for me to realize, what do I love on a Saturday morning? What do I want to do? And then finally, I want to say, if tears and smiles could talk, what would they tell you? Make sense? I have an exercise. And by the way, I'm happy to send this presentation to whoever wants it. So you don't need to worry about screenshots or taking notes, no worries. I do have some exercises for people to do on their own time, because we are short time here. So I say, in your earlier years, who had the greatest impact on you? Which instance made you feel victim? What made you feel fearful? And what truly inspired you? Believe me, it will be very revealing, right? So for me, it was my father. My father was, and my late father, he was a dean of a university. Both my parents were professors of economics, and teaching was so much in me. I always loved the way he taught, loved the way he helped the students, both my parents too, my mom too. And I loved the way he fought problems or challenges in the classroom, manage the conflicts with students, right? So if you stop and think about that person in your life, you have so much to learn, because we don't know. You're automatically inspired. And when you're inspired, you learn, you internalize that, you put that into your practice, right? Also, that's part of being true to yourself. Again, please, if somebody's monitoring questions, if there are questions, let me know. I'm just going to keep moving. Now, what does it mean to be true to yourself? We just asked that question, right? I always like to say there's an inner compass that guides you when things are difficult, when you are in a position where you don't know what decisions to make, you don't know what actions to take. What is that inner compass? So important to learn, right? Here they are. Your values, your passion, purpose, and character. That's what makes you who you are, right? And I'm sure each one of these things, everybody has some values. If you ask yourself multiple times, you know you have something that you're passionate about. If you can turn that passion into a purpose, that will be being true to yourself, right? That how you behave, what's your attitude is your character. If you package all of that, which is absolutely true to yourself, and you bring that true you to work everywhere you show up, you're going to be a lot more confident because that's who you are and that's the best version of you. Okay. Now we talked about values, passion, character, purpose, and that's your inner compass. Now comes the part which is very important, is how do you behave, right? Being true to yourself, but also your authentic behavior. What does that mean? So now we talk about these 5 things. That once you have a good, solid inner compass, which is who you are, you're confident about that, you will exude integrity, empathy. Your relationships are going to be very strong and important for you. You will be honest because you're confident. You will be showing accountability, right? That's true yourself. That's what makes you a leader, right? At this point, all of this conversation is not only just being true to yourself, but also how do you bring your true yourself and behave like an authentic leader. And these are the things that if you think about somebody who you think is very authentic and he or she is a great leader, you're going to find that they show a lot of integrity. They show empathy. They have great relationship. They're honest and they own everything they do. So this is, in my mind, is a package how you can put it together for yourself, your inner compass and your behavior. Okay.
Varsha, we have a comment from when you were talking about passions just a minute ago. Colleen has written to say that I've done that with my career switch. My passion is now my purpose and my income. So well done, Colleen. And also for those of you who are asking for a copy of the presentation, I will get Varsha, if you want to email it to me, then we'll be sure to send it out to all of you.
And I'm definitely going to, absolutely no problem. I'll send you the presentation. That's a great point about passion, right? I'm going to talk about it. And we're right there right now. Negative narratives, right? Being authentic is such a buzzword. It's not practical. Why? Right? Let's talk about this. I can't let my guards down at work. Look, I come from Wall Street. I worked on trading floors. I know how it is. My God, I don't want to be true to myself when I'm on a trading floor. I don't want to let my guards down, right? These are some of the things that we experience at work, right? It's very difficult to be true to yourself, to be authentic, to make yourself so vulnerable, be so transparent at work, because then we're worried that people might think, oh, she's weak. My God, she's emotional. So those are some of the things that we will, and I'll talk about them a little bit more, that how do we overcome that? Let's go through the negative narratives, right? Which I'm sure some of you are going to find very relatable. I do not have luxury to lose my job if I'm truthful at work. So for example, I'll give you this example straight out of press. This afternoon, one of our mentee, she's a senior manager on Wall Street at Wings for Growth, she was constantly talking about how she wants to go get that next level promotion. And me and her mentor were trying to, focus her on a development plan and a career plan. And then one day I asked her, I said, do you really like what you do? And she goes, no, I don't. I really, really don't. I really wish that I had a different kind of career. And I'm like, so what's stopping you? And she said, Varsha, I'm a single mom. I need a paycheck. That's the reality. That's the truth, right? But what, after many conversations, we together revealed that she loves being an interior designer. So we went through her desire to be an interior designer, and I think it was this evening, she came back and she presented a plan to start her own business, right? So why continue the job that you don't love? You're likely not to be successful at that job because you really don't like doing that, right? So yes, it's important that you need that paycheck. We need that paycheck. We need that stability. But sometimes it's not a bad idea to just pause and think about, what do we want? What do we like? Maybe you're likely to be more successful if you do something that you love, right? Because it's natural ability to get things done. All right. I do not know what is being authentic for me. I think a lot of people would say that. So we discussed that a little bit. I often feel my life is not in my control. So many demands on my time. Absolutely. So where is the time? And I think you heard in the previous presentation that make that time for yourself. It is important. You're going to be better version of you if you made that time for yourself. You also set a good example if you're a mom to your children and if you're a team leader to your team. Okay, I love what I do. Am I being true to myself? That's a good question, right? I mean, if you love doing what you do, we also talked about your inner compass, right? Do you have the values? Do you have a purpose? Do you have character? Do you exude authentic leadership in the way that we talked about? Being true to yourself at work is hard, but I practice at home all the time. Does that count? No, doesn't, right? We just have to be honestly true to ourselves all the time because it's impossible. I always say this to my husband that if you are doing this at home, you're probably doing it at work too. And he'll say, no, at work, I never do this. How is that possible, right? And then now you really put so much burden on yourself that you have to be somebody different at workplace, right? So why?
And Varsha, we've actually had a question come in related to some of these points. What if you love your job, but the people are your issue for growing and being heard?
People you work with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will see that if you are confident about yourself and who you are, I think people will start respecting you. I'll give you an example. I think you like this, right? When I came to this country, it was almost like, I don't know, 36 plus years ago. And I grew up in an environment where nobody ever cursed. It was a bad thing to curse. Even jokingly cursing is a bad thing, right? And guess what? I'm working on a trading floor where traders are constantly cursing, shouting, yelling, right? And the person who I was working with, my business client, he did all of that, and he also smoked. And he said, Varsha, if you want to work with me, my only time is at 7 a.m. Come see me on a trading floor at 7 a.m. So I show up on a trading floor at 7 a.m. And guess what? He said, let's go out. And I'm like, why are we going out? And he said, I'll have a smoke while I'm talking to you. I hated him smoking. Didn't really want him to smoke around me because to me, this is how I grew up. But I had to put up with him. He was a senior guy, senior trader, my career, my performance, everything depended on how he thought I was performing. So I was putting up with this. And one day I was talking to my father on the phone and I was telling him that, my God, I've never heard so many curses in my life. And he goes, why don't you go tell him that you really don't like that? And I'm like, no, he's not going to like it. That's not the culture on trading floor. But you know what I did? Next day, I decided I'm going to have a conversation with him. And I said to him, you know what? If you and I need to talk, first of all, we're not going out for smoke because I can't stand that smoke. And by the way, I really don't like you to curse because to me, that's very offending. And he was, oh, I'm so sorry, Varsha. I didn't realize. Thank you for sharing, right? And 10, 15 years later, today, we're such good friends. It's because sometimes we don't really tell people how we feel, right? If we can tell them, this is who you are. I grew up in an environment, I don't like cursing. So please don't curse around me. He was fine with that, right? He said, thank you for sharing with me. So I do feel that if you thought about those two things, your authentic behavior and your inner compass, and you behave like authentic yourself, people will start respecting you. They will. They'll see you as a very confident person. They'll see you as someone who's very resilient, right? They'll see a person who is not easily, you can't take them for a ride easily, right? You have to give them proper respect. So you get that respect from other people because you're true to yourself. I will talk about, there are a few things that you should be careful when you're being very true to yourself, right? We'll talk about some of the downsides of that so that we can navigate through this authenticity journey. Okay. If I show people who really I am, I look weak, right? Sometimes as women, we get emotional, and if we show emotions, they say it's not good to, at least not, financial industry was very tough for me. So, but you know what? I also learned through my career, during my career, that sometimes showing emotions is really important, right? If you're very passionate about the work you do and you show that through your emotions, it's not really bad. You just have to be careful, how you are expressing, what actions you are taking, and more importantly, how are you being navigating your conversation, your presentation, and your leadership at work. Okay. Okay, so as a leader, why do you need to be authentic? I love this quote from Buddha. Your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it. It is awesome, right? If we discover ourselves, and once we finish discovering, so you give your 100% to it, you are giving your best version to whatever you do at work, at home, in the community. Right? And then along with attitude, your character is about the choices you make. Choices we make is really how you will behave, right? So in my case, my example, when I went to the trader and I said, look, I don't want you to be smoking around me and I don't want you to be cursing. Yes, there's a little bit of, attitude and a little bit of character, but you know what? Because of that, I felt that I gained respect from him, that I was transparent. I told him what I didn't like about his behavior, and we had great relationships. Okay, let's now examine, as a leader, why do you need to be authentic? You're likely to be more successful. We just talked about, because you're a better version of you when you're being yourself. You will be more resilient. I have personally experienced this. And I think 2020 was very difficult for everyone. Not I think, we all know, right? And we all had to show resilience at home, in the community, at work, everywhere. And how do you show resilience is, again, being close to your passion, purpose, character, and being authentic, right? Those four and values. It's very important to bring that package to work or to wherever you are, because you're likely to be able to show resilience with that, right? So I'll tell you, Wings for Growth, for example, when pandemic happened and we're a nonprofit, we had no funding, and we had so many women lining up wanting to get into the program, and we had no funding, right? All of us were like trying to figure it out. I thought like, oh my God, are we closing the doors? Like we went through all of these things. But one thing that I remember that I had to tell myself all the time, that I'm here for a good reason. I'm here for a good mission. I want to help these women, and we're going to have to figure it out how to do it. This is not that difficult, right? That was a reminder every single day. And we were able to kick off a cohort of 20 women, which I know some of Betty and I are working together on this, right? So that was a huge accomplishment for us. that we believed in ourselves, we got the right people, and we were able to motivate everyone, bring the best in everyone, and here we go, right? So I feel it just made us more resilient, and it was a good test. 2020 was a good test of that. We talked about you'll be more confident. People will respect you more, for sure, right? You will speak up against wrong and harmful narratives. That's a test. That is a test, right? That if you see something wrong, are you going to say, oh no, I don't want to talk about it? Because let's say you're having issues with your boss, right? And you know that your boss is doing something wrong. I'm just, making it up, right? Hypothetically speaking. What are you going to do? Oh my God, I don't want to say because he's not going to like it. He or she is not going to like it. So I better just shut up and not say anything. Or you are a true, authentic person. You're going to say, I have a voice, I have an opinion, and I want to go and express my opinion. And you're going to be objective about it. It's well researched, rehearsed, and studied. So you bring your best intelligent opinion or view to your boss. It may have negative impact. Yeah, maybe your boss may or may not like it. But I feel that stand for your values and your opinions. You are right. What you did is right. Now, if your boss doesn't like it, that's his or her problem. Don't change yourself for that, because now you're trying to be untrue to yourself. That can never be good, right? If somebody's doing wrong, do you just do wrong? No, right? We continue to do the right thing, and we continue to believe in doing the right thing. That's what we teach our children. That's what we teach our next generation. It is super important. Okay, I also feel that this is something that I always felt that, when I used to hire people during my time on Wall Street, my HR person and manager always would tell me that, Varsha, you do all your hiring depending on your gut. Really is, right? So in my gut, I would feel this person is the right person for the team. It was less about the resume. It was a lot about the conversations, what that person brought to the interview, themselves as a leader, themselves as a thought leader, honest person, team player. To me, that was the thing that I was making my decisions, hiring decisions on. And I'll tell you, those are the people that are still friends with me, even after I left corporate America, because we were together for not just for a project or for work. We were together as a team. We were together. We did a lot of things together, right? So I do know that as a manager, sometimes you do have to make difficult decisions, and that sometimes can create frictions, and that's why it's not very easy to have friends at work. But one thing I will tell you, that once you're done and you left that job or went somewhere else, and now you're meeting with this person on the street, if those relations were good, they'll still come to you. You'll still come talk to them. I have a boss who I thought that I hated so much as a boss, and we're good friends after I left the job. Right? So I do think that value, the passion, it's so important to build relationships. And we should never, never compromise on that. And that's the whole thing about being right, recognizing what's right versus what's wrong. How are we doing time-wise, Kay? We're good?
We're doing pretty good. It's, wait a minute. So my laptop clock is like 3 minutes slow. I don't know why, but there you are.
You give me a like 10 minutes warning, will you?
Sure.
Or 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. And the next thing I wanted to say, how do you become an influential leader? Right? People talk a lot about, okay, how do I influence this decision? How do I influence that? How do you do that? Being authentic is a very important part of this. Very important. You cannot be influential if you're not being honest to yourself, because honesty and being true to yourself will bring passion, will bring purpose to life, and you can be more relatable, and people can see it through that you're very passionate, you're very purposeful, and they'll start listening to you, right? And that is another big advantage of being true to yourself, right? All right, any questions, Kay, from the chat, or anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and let me
We've had
know.
a couple of comments come in. Someone mentioned that a good leader is both manager and janitor. So I thought that was interesting. We had
Yeah.
some people chiming in earlier with the things that they do to relax, watching a movie, calling a friend, working on a jigsaw, and so on. And when you were talking about speaking against wrong and harmful narratives, we also had a comment saying that silence is acceptance.
Silence is acceptance, right? And I think that's exactly right, that we should decide when it's okay to be silent and when it's not. And again, always check with your inner compass, right? Is that against your values? Is that something that you stand for? Then don't be silent, right? I think those are some of the decisions that we have to make. That's why I always would say that my values guide me, my passion drive me, and my purpose is a destination for me all the time. So to me, I'm always guided with these four things. All right, I'm going to talk very quickly through the slide because this will give you a sense of what are different elements of authenticity, right? Being true to yourself. What are some of the things that you should think about when you're thinking, how can I be true to myself? First of all, build your story. If you're talking to somebody and you're creating an influence, or you're building relationships, you should always have a good story to tell. Everybody has a story. Figure out what is the best story about you. What is the story that you can relate to? What actually demonstrates you as a person? Your story should tell you who are you as a person, right? So if you haven't figured that out, I think it would be a great thing to do it to yourself, and you don't even have to tell anybody else. Tell yourself. You'll be good. You'll feel good about it. We talked about values, right? Right from wrong. So important. Intuitive action. Sometimes, you like my example that my HR person told me that I do hiring from my gut, right? Sometimes there's no books are written. You go with what in your gut you feel is right. You're likely to be right because you're listening to your inner voice. Know your blind spots. We all have, right? So if you know them, you being true to yourself can help you guide through your blind spots, right? Because as we will talk in for a few more slides after, we'll talk about what are some of the negatives of being true to yourself. For that, you do need to know your blind spots. So stay tuned in for that. Your behavior, how do you behave being true to yourself? Body language, right? Do you get into the room and find the corner and hide in the corner? Or you go and you actually sit in the middle of the table, on the middle of the table, and show confidence in your body language. Your attire, sometimes it's not a reflection of who you are, but in a way it is, right? Do you like to be very casual? Do you always want to be jewelry, makeup, hair done, right? What kind of person are you? And that's something that people, it's being true to yourself. You enjoy being that, right? We talked about introspection and reflection. Think about what makes you happy, what makes you pause and enjoy in life. Your strengths, everyone has different strengths, and it's important to know what your strengths are because they're going to help you navigate your professional career and also personal. Dreams, everyone has dreams. Write them down, right? Again, those are the dreams that you will motivate you in life. Those are the things that you look forward to doing in life. And finally, what motivates you? So these are some of the elements. Not all of them you need, but you should think about some, and that will help you through your journey of figuring out what's true yourself, what's the true authentic you are in you.
Varsha, we've had a couple of comments come in. Well, the first one says, you are one awesome young lady and a great role model for our Girl Scout team. So thank you. And then we have Lisette says, being true to yourself is also knowing your worth. And Lucretia says, being true to yourself is scary and causes fear, which could lead to forget everything and run, or face everything and rise to the occasion.
That's a great comment. And I think I don't want to say anything about that comment, but as it is, that comment is so good, right? I have no other comment to top it off because it's well said. I think it's very important. It's about knowing who you are. It's about accepting who you are. And it's about taking all of that and rising to your highest potential. So your focus should be, you focus on your strengths, your values, your passion, your purpose, and your character, and then rise yourself to your highest potential. That's that's what I think we should all look forward to when we're thinking about authenticity. All right, so now path to be authentic. What on your way to be authentic, how do you embrace it? And watch out when you may lose it. Okay, so let's go. On your way to be authentic, I think a lot of this we have talked about. Introspection, family background, and upbringing. Sometimes you think about your family background and how you were brought up. It has a lot to do with who you are. Sometimes good, and sometimes it creates a baggage. So if you were brought up in a certain way, and that becomes a baggage for you, those are blind spots. You need to get rid of it, right? So you, again, recognizing that and managing that through your authenticity journey. Beliefs versus action. What do you believe? And if your actions are according to your beliefs, make a note of that. That's, again, on your way to be authentic. These are some of the things that you follow. And then examine your fears and doubts, compassion for self and others, embrace your values, and let go of negative beliefs. The next one is embracing authenticity to grow. How do you embrace it? Trust your judgment and decisions. Sometimes we make decisions and we regret them. But, oh my God, I don't know why I made that decision, right? Because we never really paused and checked with our inner compass. Important that you constantly make that as a habit, that if I made a decision, is this something I'm very happy with? Can I say that this is true me, right? Sometimes I had a few situations in my work that people said, oh, I think this must be Varsha, right? Because people knew that, an example, I never really, and now Zoom, we have to do PowerPoint presentation, but PowerPoint presentations is not my thing. If you were doing it in a person, I would ask if there was a room with a whiteboard and I'll start writing, right? That's me. I never, in my management consulting careers with PwC, I never showed up at the client site with presentations. That was never heard of. People thought that consultants bring tons of presentations, and we did. And I'm like, I know, but I can't talk through the decks. I really like to get up and start drawing things on a whiteboard and asking questions and engaging people because I'm a teacher inside me, right? So to me, I think sometimes you feel like your people will start to recognize you. That's Varsha. Yeah, I can imagine her doing that, right? And they start respecting that in you. My clients always knew that Varsha will tell the truth, right? If my CEO or my client is a CIO, at one time he was a CIO, and he asked me that, hey, I'm thinking that we'll start another engagement. What do you think? And it was a great, big, large deal for PwC. And I thought about it and I came back and said to him, I don't think we can do this. Not a good thing for our partners, right? Why did we lose a deal? And I said, I don't want to do this because we don't have enough people. We don't have the right expertise. So I'd rather be honest with my client and tell them that this is not a good use of their money. Now, when that happens, you have a client who will always respect you, right? Yes, at that time, it was not a good thing for me and for my performance for that year. But that year, today, I have all of those people part of Wings for Growth because they knew that I'm passionate about this, I'm honest, I'm authentic, and they were able to trust me for what I started to do. They trusted me, right? So to me, I think we do have to make those decisions sometimes, which are risky or not very in our favor at the moment, but long term, I do think that leaves a great impression on people. They start to trust you and respect you more. Okay. When you may lose your way, when you're trying to be someone else. You know, I've heard this many times, and I'm sure you guys have too, that, oh, I have a role model. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to follow in their footsteps, right? Very important. I think it's a good thing, but along the way, don't lose who you are. So you take all the great things from your role model or the person you're very impressed with, but along the way, don't lose yourself. That's very important, and we need to watch out for that. Sense of reality, sometimes being true to yourself, you know, makes you or puts you in a situation where it's very hard to judge reality, right? That, okay, this is who I am, but my environment today is not that. And I cannot be this, right? Whatever that example. So knowing your environment and understanding and staying very close to what is a reality while you're being true to yourself will help you, you know, so that you don't get into bigger issues. Fear of failures and rejection sometimes stops us from being true to ourselves, right? That's, for example, let's just say that if my example, previous example, that, you know, if you want to tell your boss that I don't really agree with your approach, so you know that there's a fear of rejection, that maybe they won't like it, maybe they will have a bad performance here for me. So that can stop you from being true to yourself, right? So we just have to navigate through that carefully, figure out whether it's worth it in the long term. But short term, yes, there is a risk, but you're willing to take that risk in order to establish that trust and confidence in yourself and for other people. Okay. Sometimes craving success, if you're constantly craving success, you could lose being true to yourself, right? Because you're just, I don't care. I really want that next promotion. I don't care if I have to do 1, 2, or 3, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go get it, right? So yeah, along the lines, you have to be very careful about that. Sometimes being lonely can hurt that. Imposters, we all have imposters, and desire to be rich. Yes, we know that if you want to be rich too quickly, then yeah, you're making compromises along the way. That may not be good for you, and that may not be true yourself. And again, perfectionist. So watch out when you're being true to yourself. Hopefully you're not being perfectionist.
And Varsha, as we go to the next slide, I just want to let you know that we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, I think I'm almost done. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, so then I have another exercise for everyone to think about. Do you have a fear of failing? Think about what incident made you fearful. What do you have that, why do you have that fear? Lack of confidence, disapproval from others. How do you make decisions in a situation where you are fearful? These are things that if you jot it down, it will actually help you create your blind spots, as we talked about in the previous slide, right? So it's a good exercise, writing them down. It will also help you in your authenticity journey, right? That you're aware of your blind spots, you're aware of failures, rejections, and what you're fearful of. And then you can manage that. Now let's talk about this slide that I've been mentioning, that it's coming. Risk of being authentic and steps to navigate. What are they? Is too much authenticity bad? I don't know if anybody wants to tell me if it is or if it's not. Anyone? I think Colleen is speaking.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, sometimes when you try to be authentic, that some people seem to think that you're being fake. And I can come off that way a lot because I'm really, really, I don't know, like excitable when I talk. So like if I'm really into something, like I go, my eyes get big and I just start talking very quickly. And, you know, I've heard other moms like say it behind my back that like, oh my God, she drives me crazy. She's just too out there. So sometimes I think like you can just get caught up in your own, you know, enthusiasm and wanting to be authentic, and it just comes off in a different way and people see you as fake.
Yeah, and see, that's such a good point, Colleen. I agree, because you're actually being very passionate, right?
Yeah,
And
I
then
call it passion, but they call
yeah,
it
and then
show
people exactly right, that's a risk, right? That's why you need to know your blind spots. That if you're being passionate about something, think about, are you being thoughtful? Are you being insightful in what you're saying? Right? How's your behavior? Are you bringing a lot of integrity, a lot of empathy, right? How are you being perceived as somebody who is seasoned, mature, right? So yes, I mean, exactly right, that being authentic and being very passionate sometimes can be misunderstood, right? So you have to learn how to carefully navigate that again. So here are my few things that I will share. Oversharing may question your credibility and effectiveness. And exactly what Colleen was saying, that we're very excited and we want to share so much, and people like, oh my God, you know? So you have to be, again, I would say, check your credibility, right? Bring something very insightful to say, more relatable to say, show empathy along the way. So you're kind of winning people's heart and their attention and their in the process their trust. You may seem to be too rigid to change and adopt. That's the most common one. You know, I'm confident, I've done this all these years, I've been successful, I don't need to change, right? That is sometimes can be very dangerous. At least people will perceive you like that. So again, knowing that and carefully showing that in your behavior, that you're open, you're flexible, you can listen to other points of views, you can learn from others while you're still very confident about what you believe. Right? So it's very dangerous, but you can easily manage if you know what to watch out and if you're consciously behaving that way. Right? Your team may be less creative, fearing your disapproval, right? If you're too strong and too confident, you know, confident is good, but if people felt that, oh my God, you know, she's not going to listen anyway, she knows it's her way or no way, right? Then yeah, you're actually killing teams creativity. So you have to be careful how to balance that, right? So it's, you don't come out and say, all right guys, I already know what to do, here are the things that we're going to do, let's do it, right? That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, you know, I really have this project or this idea, I don't know, what do you guys think? Let's hear everybody, right? And then bring what you believe with a lot of knowledge, insightfulness, thought leadership, so that people can see that wow, you know what, she has a better idea, and then they will be agreeing to what you are saying. So yeah, again, it's a little bit about management. How do you manage a team while you're still kind of being a great thought leader and authentic leader? The steps to practice authenticity safely at work. Build a foundation of self-knowledge, right? It's very important to make sure that you know what your subject matter is. You know who you are and how you're bringing that together as a package, whether it's your project at work, or it's a community project, or at home with your family. It's extremely important that you build a good foundation so that what you're saying can be relatable and it can be respected. Consider relevance to the task. And I think, you know, Colleen will agree with this too, that sometimes in our passion, we start to say things and we forget, oh, is it relevant? or we're just, being emotional about this, a lot of energy, a lot of confidence. And then we forget, oh, but my God, it's not even relevant. Why are we talking about this? Right? So you could just really constantly check that in your head that, yes, I will tell you, and you probably already have heard this in a whole 45 minutes or so, that I'm very passionate about being a teacher. I love teaching, right? But can I for me to be a good teacher, I also have to know my subject matter, right? I as a good teacher is also a good student. Don't forget that, right? So I have to remind myself that I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly listening. We have to. Sometimes the Zoom calls don't make it very easy because people can put things on mute, and now I don't know who wants to talk and other, but you have to listen, right? This is why it's very, very important to know what you're doing needs to be relevant to that task. Keep examining your truth and reality. I think we talked a lot about sometimes we do things because we want to be rich too soon. We want to get the promotion way too quickly. We want to, sometimes we make wrong decisions. So if we constantly keep checking, is that the right decision for me? Right? I want to get that job. It has a lot of travel, but I don't care. I really want to be promoted. And then I have a family I need to manage at home too. So am I making the right decision? So you're constantly checking that in your head. Understand the organizational and cultural context. So again, it is extremely important that sometimes the place that you're working at, that culture, and I hate to say it, but it could be just plain toxic, right? So you being honest and being true to yourself and bringing your voice to the table, you're doing all the right things, but you can't change anything, right? It's very important that at that point you recognize that either you have an authority to make the change or you can't change anything, find another job or find another place to work where you can be true to yourself. Okay? Delay or avoid very personal disclosures. I tell you, I don't know how to do this. I'm like the same person inside, same person out. I don't know how to hide anything. It was very difficult for me when I was a manager because I had to pretend like, oh, these are the things I can't tell my team. These are the things that I can be very open to them. It was difficult, and that part of my job I really didn't like so much. But it's always good practice. All right, and this is the last slide. Describe a situation where you were thrown into difficult situations that created stress and pressure. How did you react? How did you resolve the situation? And you're doing all of this keeping in mind that you're being true to yourself, right? So you're writing it down because this will it will reveal a lot of things about yourself as you do this exercise, right? So how did it change you? What were you trying to be authentic, right? Those are some of the things that will help you figure out your true self. I don't want to cover this slide because I think your previous speaker has talked a lot about children and how do you teach them to be true to yourself, right? I heard her and it was very good. So there's nothing I can add, but Kay requested that to me that we should talk about how do we teach our children to be authentic. So I brought some points I'll quickly share, but I think Andrea did a good job of covering them. Help them learn about themselves, right? You always have to ask your child, and the best example that I had that I did with my son, that I asked him, what do you love about yourself? What do you love about me, right? And then really focus on who they are inside rather than their skills and their abilities. It's a good way, constantly practice that so they will also learn about you as parents and about themselves as a person. And that I did that with my son. Now he's an adult, and he always told me, I don't like to sit in the classroom. And I'm like, which child is going to say I like to sit in the classroom? You have to go to school, you have to learn. But what he was trying to tell me, that I love playing piano, I love music, I love drawing arts, right? Those are some of the things that I learned through these conversations with him. And when he went to school, he went to Stevens because I thought technology is the way to go for him. But you know what? He didn't like that. And today he's a marketing manager for a large publishing house because he's a creative self, right? And I really felt that stayed with him, that I'm a creative person. I want to be a creative director working for a marketing company. So I think some of those things, they stay with them, and we help them realize that about themselves. Allow them to space to fail. I think it's really important that we don't always be there for them. Let them learn by failing, falling. What can you learn from their experience? Ask them those questions, that if that didn't go the way they wanted it, why did it not go that way? What have you learned? I think, we talked a lot. I think Andrea talked about that. Let them develop independent thinking. And then finally, always praise but teach first, right? We always say, if the child it's drawn something, we say, wow, that's so good, I love it. But better conversation is, what made you draw this? What were your thoughts? How did you feel when you were drawing this, right? That will teach them, rather than constantly just saying, wow, that's great, perfect, this is best, right? Yeah, it helps, but it's not teaching them anything. So I like saying that, praise but teach first. Also, sometimes, I used to, when my son was like almost maybe in middle school, my father came home to visit from India. And my father, my mom, and we all sat down, and my father said to my son, hey, talk to me about your values. And he's like, what's values? Right? And he's like, what does that even mean? And then he talked about his values. He made me talk about my values and my mom's values. And it was a good family conversation. And then he learned what values really meant, right? So sometimes I think teach them what values are from very younger age. That might help. Like, I know it helped me, and I talk a lot about my values that my father has given. And now I hope that my son would do that with his children one day. All right, this is it. I'm going to stop sharing. And if there's still time available, Kay, I'm happy to take questions. I know I talked a lot.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, if anybody has any final questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask them. And while you're all thinking about that, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight, Varsha, for sharing your expertise and inspiring us. And most of the time I was listening to you, I kept thinking, I just never really realized that there is so much self-care wrapped up in being true to yourself. I don't know why that never occurred to me before, but you've given me a lot to think about. And I'm sure that's the case for everybody else here. And as we said, I think a lot of people would love to have your presentations. So if you want to email it to me, then we will make sure that we get it sent out to everybody tonight. Or
yes,
well, in the next day or two, we'll get it sent out to you.
Yep, absolutely. I would send it out to you. And again, if you guys have any specific questions for me, happy to respond that via email or whatever. I think Girl Scout is a great partnership for Wings for Growth. And I see Betty here, and we've been working together on a project. So I'm very proud that we have this partnership. And for people who don't know what Wings for Growth is, it's a women's leadership development program. It's a nonprofit. It's a very highly structured and high touch leadership program. So if you care to look into it, want to recommend that to your friends, feel free.
Right, I put the link to the website in the chat. So quickly scroll up before we end. And once again, just like to say thank you for joining us tonight, Varsha. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciated the time and opportunity.
Great, great. And I believe now we're handing it back to Betty for some closing words.
Yes, thank you, Kay. And Varsha, thank you so much. And as Kay said, it's in the chat, but if you want to reach out to Varsha, her website is wingsforgrowth.org. And if you want to reach out to Dr. A, you can follow her on Twitter. It's Dr. A on Kids, or you can follow her on LinkedIn. It is, which you should have in the invitation, Andrea Bastiani Archibald. And as she said, you can direct message her. and just say, Girl Scout presentation or, Girl Scouts January 12th, and she'll make sure that she responds to you. So wingsforgrowth.org and Dr. A on kids. So I want to thank all of the volunteers who are on tonight. I know, as both Andrea and Varsha mentioned, you all have such busy lives and you are volunteering, you are giving your time to help our girls, to help them grow. And especially during a pandemic, there's no better time to be a Girl Scout because we are here, we are supporting each other, we are being authentic. So thank you, Varsha, for sharing your thoughts with us and for helping us again, as you said, Kay, think about the self-care. I mean, even if it's hiding in the bathroom for 3 minutes.
Yes.
My kids are grown now, but I remember those days, like, please give me 3 minutes. Just to breathe, to think about all that we've been through, acknowledge the grief that we've had, whether we've lost loved ones, the grieving of our normal lives, and looking forward to when whatever the new normal will be. But I want to just give my heartfelt thanks to all of the volunteers that are here with us and all of those out there throughout New Jersey and throughout the world. Yes. And to thank also our wonderful troop support volunteer services staff from all of the 4 councils for caring about all of our volunteers and helping us to work through these challenging times and to make sure that you feel supported because we are here for you. So thank you all again for sharing your night with us after, I'm sure, what has been a very busy day. I want to wish everyone a happy, healthy 2021. And as I say to my staff, they will tell you, wear a mask, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and stay 6 feet apart. But thank you all. And thank you, Judy Ginty, my Director of Troop Support and Customer Care, and of course, Kay and Dina and all the wonderful folks at Girl Scout councils throughout New Jersey. And thank you especially to Varsha and Andrea for being here with us tonight.
Hey, Betty, can I say this, that I feel Girl Scouts will have such a big opportunity to help our next generation younger girls. They're going through so much. These are very trying times, right? As Andrea was saying, that they're seeing all these different news and we're going through pandemic, right? So we all collectively together, we have a huge responsibility to help our next generation. So first of all, kudos to all of you for doing this amazing job. And Betty, I will continue to look forward to partner with Girl Scouts so that we can continue our mission.
Yes, thank you. Nothing's more precious than our children. So we thank you all for supporting us. And as Sandra put in the chat, we thank the Provident Bank Foundation for allowing us all to be here tonight at no cost to our volunteers. So thank you, stay well, and good night, Girl Scouts.